university, which like all the business, like all my business partners, so the five of us, we all went to Rutgers, so we're affiliated.
Oh,
One of my business partners is a PhD student there in plant genetics. So he's very tied into Rutgers being, one of the biggest like breeding schools in the country in terms of like producing new varietals and testing different things. So they're constantly doing that and testing out, crops and in different areas. And so for this second one, it was ginger. We basically found out that they were growing, hundreds of pounds of ginger, like right next to the distillery, in the same county. And, this was really, really amazing. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like what's called baby ginger.
I
It's
don't think so.
super, super cool. Like before it dries out and becomes all white and, and hard, it's like this really beautiful, like almost like dragon fruit looking like coloring. It's like pink and, green and like it has all these like different tones to it. And the skin is so soft you can just like peel it off with your finger. So you don't need to like peel it the way that a normal ginger is. So we had access to all this ginger for free from Rutgers. And so I decided to, what do you do with ginger? I made a giant batch of alcoholic ginger beer that I then distilled into a spirit. And so that was our second one. This is, the third floor technically, because the first floor is the lobby. So the maple one that was, O2 maple, the second floor. And then this is O3 ginger. After that, I was like, what can I do to basically do something even crazier? And that's basically what this project became. We just released our 10th one, but, after the ginger, I did dandelion. We basically went out and we picked 100 pounds of dandelion flowers, made a dandelion wine. I distilled it and then bittered it with roasted dandelion root and sweetened it with the entire U.S. supply of dandelion honey. And so this basically it became a dandelion amaro. Like it's bitter and sweet and like honestly the amount of people are begging me to make this again is like insane. But like the flavors on it are so crazy, so almost like chocolatey and bitter and like and you do get like that dandelion. And so that was a really cool one. After that I did tomato. I did Jersey. I don't know if you have any Jersey listeners, but something that New Jersey is known for, at least within New Jersey. I don't know if other states know about this, but we have amazing tomatoes, absolutely
Huh.
amazing tomatoes, and that's something that I wanted to. I was like, I can't believe no one in the state has done anything with tomatoes yet. So I got 2,500 pounds of tomatoes
Jeez.
and fermented and distilled it. This is actually one of the reasons why uh I'm so good at pivoting, because this tomato spirit just absolutely kicked my ass. So 2,500 pounds of tomatoes just ended up with so little sugar in them, because they're also like mostly water. They're barely sweet. Ended up getting only about 5 gallons of alcohol out of like a 300-gallon fermentation. And it was like, that's like 25 bottles. I can't sell 25 bottles after spending so much money on tomatoes. Like we wouldn't have anything to experiment with, like, cause we have to make cocktails and stuff too. So I decided to turn it into, a liqueur. I did a tomato liqueur. I used actually the back set from the tomatoes, the back set being what's left over in the still, which is usually super acidic, but also just so flavorful, because I mean it basically had all of the actual umami of the tomato, and I used that along with sugar, and I added it back in with the tomato spirit, and so I was able to basically double my yield, and at least have 50 big bottles, or at least, or what I did was 100 375 bottles of it, which is not a huge, profitability for me, but, at least somebody did it. You know what? And if someone wants to do it, I can tell them 100 reasons not to do it. But it still turned out so like beautifully. Like the flavor of it was insanely good. Like it basically tasted like a tomato. Um, then I did a turmeric. Same idea with the ginger. I was basically given a bunch of turmeric by Rutgers University that they were growing nearby, and I did a similar turmeric. But I wanted it to be more of a liqueur this time, so I did a turmeric, and I did, since it was local turmeric, I did a local wildflower honey with it. And so that one, basically, I had so many, like, especially older people coming in and buying, like, you know, bottles of it because they're like, this is medicinal almost. And I'm like, I can't legally say that. That's that's you. But they're like, honestly, like, it feels like I feel so much better after drinking it. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's good to know. But I mean, it is local raw honey and this turmeric. And I mean, the one thing I'd say with the turmeric is the reason why I might not ever do it again is everything was yellow. Everything.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere it accidentally splashed on the ground. Everywhere. Like, it was absolutely the worst thing. And then I did, one of the ones that's available on the website is a kvass spirit. So I mentioned materials, but I also mentioned concept. So kvass is an Eastern European bread soda. And so I did that. I basically try to imitate the flavors of the soda, but in a spirit. And so I had this, you know, almost like beer, like wort base that I distilled. And then I, macerated in, just a ton of like rye bread and raisins. Because typically it's also made with raisins. And I was able to kind of, you know, get like the sweetness exactly right, also using like a rye extract that I had to make like in-house because apparently no one sells rye extract. And it was absolutely like this spirit is, well, it's more of a liqueur, is probably one of my favorites to just drink on its own, as well, because like sweetness wise, it's like exactly like a perfect, old fashioned. And so you have like
Oh.
just like this like completely like this rye bread taste, with just like the proper amount of sweetness and some like raisin, qualities to it as well. Um, but that one, and then I did probably the one I'm the most proud of in terms of flavor. It was a peach and basil spirit. So it
Ooh.
was, I was reached out to by Rutgers again, and they wanted me to do something with basil. And I thought long and hard. My initial instinct whenever I see, you know, that someone else has done something before is to not do that. And so I've seen actually that basil spirits like basil eau de vie and things like that, are, you know, are very, like, do really, really well. Like, they, a lot of times they'll win, like, double gold at San Francisco, and, like, other places. And I was like, I absolutely don't want to just do basil. I want to actually capture, like, more flavor and, you know, do almost like a pairing within the spirit. And so I had the idea to do peaches. Our New Jersey, I mean, it really is the garden state. Like we're really good at growing certain things. Our peaches are absolutely fantastic. The orchard, that I ended up using is actually pre-revolutionary. And you know, like it's that old and the peaches are like absolutely the best in New Jersey. I got 2,000 pounds of those peaches. It took 11 hours to cut, take out the pit, and blend and start the fermentation of like nonstop work. But it was absolutely worth it, because the flavors that, you know, I got out of the peaches themselves was insane. And then, distilling it one additional time with the basil, in just the proper amounts, very slowly but surely introducing the basil. It basically tastes like, I don't know if you're familiar or at least you've ever had, but in New Jersey it's very common, especially during peach season. They'll do, at really high end restaurants, they'll do peach, mozzarella and basil and like, you know, balsamic glaze over it, and almost
Ooh.
kind of like it's so delicious. It basically acts kind of um like tomato, but just like, fruitier and tastier. And so it's like a very common thing. And so that was my initial inspiration. And so, drinking the spirit, you get the peach, you get the basil, and it kind of like oscillates back and forth. It's like this perfect pairing. And that one sold out way too fast. People were really crazy about it. And then this past Friday, um, I released my latest one. So this is a honey spirit. But I didn't want to just do any honey, especially since like the flavors typically get lost like during the actual distillation process. So I wanted to have a ton of flavor to begin with. And so I used this rare honey from Tanzania, made from the miombo flower.
Huh.
And the honey itself is like smoky and almost tobacco-y. So I was really hopeful that like that flavor would make it through the final product, and it really did. After distilling it and then aged it in a used mead barrel from one of the meaderies in New Jersey, and so this kind of came out as like kind of a collaboration with them, because I wanted it to pick up even more honey flavor. And so this honey spirit is absolutely fantastic as well. It's floral and it's slightly smoky and tobacco-y, but like it's a spirit, so it acts kind of like a mix between a rum, a whiskey, and a gin almost, because of like the nature of it. Um, but yeah, that was my very fast of my quick notes on all the crazy things I've made so far. And that's just like within that category. I mean, like I said, if you counted all of those and the ones I mentioned, that's only like 16. So I've made 14 other ones, between, some other things that are fully available, and then other ones that, I made for a season or whatever. So
You seem
that's
to
kind of, yeah.
you seem to be
What
having like the time of your life just figuring out and tinkering with obviously flavors and what you could do with them, and then obviously like you said, some of them you wanted to tint a little different colors so that people didn't use them for certain things. Where do you, I guess, where is your inspiration coming from? Like, where are you getting ideas to do some of these things?
So I mentioned before, I'm very culinary minded. So I love to
Mm.
cook. I've always loved to cook, and I mean, my mom always, like, even from a young age, she would like ask me, she would have me try like the food she's cooking and be like, what does it need, kind of thing. And so for me, like I'm very very much always like that. So I'll be able to typically visualize flavors, and then I try to like achieve that through the fermentation, distillation, are basically just the tools for me. And so I'll do a ton of research. I'll figure all this stuff out. But I mean, at this point, I'm kind of, um, a lot of times I'm like, I happen to become like the expert in that particular, in that particular material or whatever, because, there isn't really a how-to guide anywhere. So I have
Right.
to basically figure it out myself. Um, but you know what? You're right. It's absolutely so fun. And this is the one thing. Uh, like a lot of people open up distilleries, and even breweries, and they concentrate on like particular things that they think are going to do really really well.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the exact opposite for me. And I mean, my brother, he's the finance guy. Like in terms of like he does the finance, the accounting, everything for 3BR, and he also he always like gives me so much shit for for spending so much money on crazy ingredients and doing all these like huge gambles. But like at the end of it, um this is I'm making things for myself, and I think that passion comes through, and people really get into especially when I can talk about my inspiration, everything, instead of just being like, okay, this is the whiskey that I make, and I
Right.
mean, there's a distillery down the road also makes whiskey. I mean, that's what, but why, why did you do this particular thing? Like, and for me, it's this every single season, this is the thing I look forward to most, is making some crazy thing that, that as far as I know, no one's ever made before.